Hi, welcome to episode 1 of the new Tau Codex. We are reviewing or giving a general overview of what we have here. Obviously, very early days, not even an official release yet. So this is very much a little bit of theory crafting more than anything else. We tend to like to try and get some stuff on the table before we talk about it, but this is fresh. How are you feeling about this, Jack, our specialist?
I think I'm pretty happy with it. There's a lot of opportunities in here, a lot of tools in here, a lot of new stuff to try out, a lot of things to experiment with, which I'm pretty happy about. It's not all sunshines and roses, but I mean, it's there's still plenty in there for me to get excited about. So I'm pretty happy overall.
Good, yeah. And how about yourself, John? I know that you've recently picked up some Tau models.
As a new Tau main, I've got history. So when they first launched in 2001, I bought some at Games Day. I bought Angor Proc. I had some fun with them. Painted probably what was probably the equivalent of like a third of an army, and then never really played with them. So I come full circle. It seems interesting to me. So far, there seems to be a lot of things that have been toned down, but at the same time, maybe that gives more opportunity for the other things to shine. But we'll see.
Reminiscing about the past is my thing. We'll have words about this after the show. Don't do it again. So, what do we get? The first thing you get with the Tau Codex is you get the greater good. And can you succinctly summarize that for us, Jack? Because that is a lot of words.
They're very small too, so
Yeah.
just because there's a lot to fit on there. For the greater good, a lot of people think it's quite complex. It's very simple when you break it down. When you shoot with a Tau unit, if you have another Tau unit with the For the Greater Good faction, then that unit can spot for the first unit. This gives it +1 ballistic skill, and if the unit that is spotting for you has a marker light, it gives you ignore cover as well. The downside is that if you shoot at anything other than the target you are being spotted for, then you take a -1 ballistic skill instead. So no split firing is the intention.
Yeah. No split firing, but interestingly stacks with a lot of the other efficiency boosts you can get with Tau, where, if you've got a +1 to hit, obviously that sticks with the +1 ballistic skill, so you can theoretically be hitting on 2s in some situations.
Yeah. And the only other thing to keep in mind is people wonder, like, oh, can this spot, can this not spot? The only things you need to be able to spot for something else is you have to be line of sight and eligible to shoot. There's no range restriction. There's no can you shoot. It doesn't stop you from shooting. It doesn't stop you doing actions or anything like that. It's just those two things you gotta have.
Yeah, an eligible to shoot doesn't mean you have to have a gun profile either.
Yeah,
specifically. And when you said for the greater good greater good units, that just basically means anyone that's not Tower Auxiliary, so not crew or Vespids, right?
Ethereals also don't
And
have
Ethereal,
it.
yeah. Okay. So
I wouldn't
most
know.
of the army, yeah.
Running Farsight, the correct way to play Tau.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Farsight, my favorite, Crisis Battlesuits. Little bit different to how they were. Previously, they were one squad. You ran them in a brick of 6. You ran them with as many drones as possible. And they cost an arm, a leg, and the rest of your body. Now they are very different. They've been broken down into 3 different units. You can have 3 of each unit. So in theory, you could have 9 squads of the battlesuits. However, you only get 3 battlesuits per squad. On top of that, you can't have 2 of the same drone. You can now only have 1 shield drone and then 1 other drone, for example, a marker drone. So you're capped at 5 wounds instead of 6, like you have been with the Index. And you have very specific locked weapons. However, the upside of that is you now come with datasheet buffs that line up with what you might expect that unit to do. So, for example, the squad with the double melter gets rerolls to wound and rerolls damage if it's shooting vehicles and monsters. Is that correct, Jack?
Yeah, that's the one.
Lovely. And what do the other 2 do as well?
So your Star Scythe battle suits are your anti-infantry suits. So if they're shooting at anything that excludes vehicles and monsters, they get +1 AP. The whole unit gets +1 AP. And then you have the Fire Knife battle suits, which gives their unit reroll 1s to hit, or full rerolls to hit if they're shooting at a unit that is at full strength.
Which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
Of course, another big change is you're used to seeing Crisis suits having a 4-up invuln. It's now locked to only the is it Fire Knife, the squad with the melter?
It's the Sunforge. So
Sunforge.
previously, the way that the battlesuits would work is you had 4 hard points, as they're commonly referred to, where you can put a gun or a support system. Now the guns are locked and support systems are locked. So instead of being able to choose, you have shield generators for the Sunforges. You have what is a battlesuit support system, so it allows you to ignore hit modifiers for the fire knives, and then the it's fallback and shoot for the star sides. Yeah, star sides.
Lovely. Something that you said before we went live, which I thought was quite interesting, was previously you would bring different crisis commanders or different commanders with a buff to specifically buff the unit of crisis suits. Now you might look at it, which squad of crisis do I bring to buff the commander? Because the commanders still have 4 guns. You know, they still are the better damage output unit. They are now locked to only having a single cyclic iron blaster, so sorry, you are going to have to take some modeling clippers to your models if you weren't smart and magnetized everything. But now you might be looking at the datasheet and going, okay, this unit's giving me additional AP. Do I want to be running that, you know, with a crisis commander that's running lots of missile pods, for example, and getting up close and personal?
Yeah, the previous crisis data sheet was it just gave you a mobility increase, which is always advanced 6, but the new one actually gives you an output increase, and now the commanders are worth essentially 2 suits worth of guns. So you know it's a considerable damage increase on the unit when you add them, and then that also multiplies up by applying the unit's damage increase buff to the commander as well.
Yeah. Something to note as well, which, just to make it very clear, all crisis suits now only have 2 guns, whereas they used to be able to take 3.
Yes.
So we are looking at much cheaper units, but each unit does theoretically do quite a bit less damage.
Yes.
All right. So units of note outside of the crisis suits, because we could probably do an entire 30-minute video just talking about how to make the most of those, which, you know, maybe that'll come up later on down the line when we've got more experience with them. We've got 3 units of note. These were sort of your go-to picks. Where do you want to start with these, Jack?
So I guess something before I go into these, just to kind of look at the data sheets in general. I don't think that there's not a ton of changes across the data sheets. There's a couple of little changes here and there, but for the most part, a lot of the changes to the way that you're going to play the army is going to come from the detachments. In general, the data sheets outside of the crisis suits haven't radically changed. One of the few exceptions to this is the strike team, which got a new special rule. When they shoot a unit, they suppress them, which means they are -1 to hit with both close combat and range for the rest of that battle round. Player 10, which is a lot better than what it was, I think, because they used to have Overwatch on 4+ if they were on an objective, which was very niche. You very rarely saw it. But this one is a nice little support piece because they are 30-inch range. They can reach out and apply that at a distance. That's a nice little force multiplier. And beyond that, they also have much better synergy with the new detachments than they did in Callion. They had essentially none, really.
Lovely. So strike team definitely got a bit of a glow up there. Obviously fairly cheap, sits in your Devilfish, brings as a support piece debuff, has the ability to be buffed by stratagems we'll get into later on. But I know, for example, one of the reasons you might take breaches previously is for their output, being able to reroll wounds. One of the detachments gives you reroll wounds if you come out of a transport. So like you say, there is a lot more sort of play with a unit that we weren't necessarily seeing beforehand. However, stealth battlesuits, this is another one that got a bit of a rules change, a bit of a glow up.
Yeah, so it's a really simple change. That in addition to giving reroll 1s to wound when they are a observer unit, that's to say if they're spotting for someone else, then that you reroll hits as well as reroll 1s to wound. Reroll ones hits of 1, as well as reroll wounds of 1. Which again is it's just a really nice efficiency buff. It works out really well. And then if you combine that once again with the existing stratagems, they just have a lot more utility and even in some cases a lot more output. So they have a lot of potential there. They offer a real competition against Tetras, which are sort of the ubiquitous spotting unit currently.
Which is good because you don't want really to have to use full twirled units as your sort of competitive staple. It's
Yeah.
much better to be able to pull that out of the plastic range. And then finally, the third one you've gone for is the Riptide Battlesuit. What's the big glow up here?
The big glow up here is, again, it's synergy with the existing detachments. The data sheet hasn't changed. If anything, it got slightly worse because their missile drones have lost a bit of AP. Has been corrected. But yeah, the stuff like the Montcard attachment giving them lethal hits, or the +1 strength and AP from the retaliation cadre work out really well. So they just fit into those attachments really nicely, and they're just in general a really good output piece, especially since with the changes to the crisis suits, making them not quite as suited for dealing with large blocks of elites. Um, it makes the damage 4 of the ion accelerator quite useful, especially with all those custodians running around.
Yeah, absolutely. It deals with the -1 damage that custodians can whack out reasonably comfortably. So yeah, very good. Any thoughts on these, John?
No, so I'm very much taking notes at this stage, trying to figure out what units I want to take, because like breaches I knew were solid, but now hearing kind of the glow up things like strike teams, I'm like, okay, so it's not just I'm definitely going that way. So it's kind of it's nice choices, right? And not having it just be I have to start with this in my army, having some options. Although Riptide, you're on the list.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to say that these are the 3 best units in the Codex or anything, but they're definitely ones to look out for and pay attention to, because there's a lot of these data sheets have like small changes. You know, the Skyray's main gun is twin link now, and the Hammerhead's SMS is not twin linked anymore, and stuff like that that you need to look out for when you're double checking over your data sheets. But yeah, these ones are definitely ones that are really interesting and going to change probably the frequency. You see them in lists.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to describe it.
Lovely stuff. All right, so indexed attachment, carry on. It has had a bit of a change, unlike most of the indexed attachments that we've seen. John, can you give us a quick run through on what carry on does?
Right, so from the third battle round onwards, ranged weapons equipped by Tau Empire models from your army have sustained hits 1 as an ability, or sustained hits 2 instead while targeting their spotted unit.
Yeah, the change here is you used to get sustained 2 if you were guided, and that was it. So you could split fire and take the burst still negative, but still have your sustain 2. But now it's only sustain 2 when targeting your main target. Which is a minor change, but it did come up occasionally. So
it's also one of the things that might make Tetras a little bit less ubiquitous, because if you're fishing for those sustained hits too, that's really strong. But if you're playing one of the different detachments, committing into that full rerolls, while full rerolls are good, if you're not going for sustained hits too, it's got less of an obvious value there.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird maths to do with Tetras that I'd rather not do. So just give me reroll ones here. I'll just do that instead.
Seems reasonable to me. What about the enhancement of note? What did we go with, John?
So this was the solid image projection unit. So after both players have deployed their armies, select up to 3 Tau Empire units from your army and redeploy them. When doing so, you can set those units up in strategic reserve if you wish, regardless of how many units are already in strat reserves.
Can't see a reason why this would be good. Win the movement game before it even starts.
Handy.
Yeah, I mean, this is the replacement for the Pure Tide engram, which is good because it was not a rate enhancement, and this is a really, really good one. So there's lots of utility for this. You can block infiltrators with stuff like crew, Firestalkers, or Pathfinders, then redeploy them back to a safe point, and you can use it to move broadsides, which are very slow, into a position where they might be able to get a line of sight in a turn or two. You can deploy things forward and bring them back after you've baited out a unit to be opposite them on the board. There's so much you can do with a redeploy. Unfortunately, it is before you know who goes first, but that is pretty much is the standard. So that's what you'd expect.
All right, and which stratagem did we go for here?
So we went with Attempting Trap, which is a battle tactic. So You don't get free battle tactics.
There is one way. There
Is
is
there one way? It's the
Commander
commander.
Farsight. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does give you the ability to use a basically Space Marine Captain Aura,
Yeah.
where you use it again and you get it for free.
Cool. So just for that, and obviously if someone does a Vex style ability, and it is basically in your shooting phase, one Tau Empire unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. The first time you use this stratagem, you must also select one objective marker that is not in your opponent's deployment zone. Until the end of the battle, this becomes your trap objective marker. And basically, until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes a ranged attack that targets the enemy unit within range of your trap objective marker, add 1 to the wound roll. Pretty solid. You cannot use this stratagem, though, during the first or second battle round, which obviously ties into Carry On, right? Because that's their kind of hiding back turns.
So interestingly, the wording in there stops you from using it twice because it says the first time you use the stratagem in the phase, and you pick the stratagem, you pick the objective, sorry, and then for the rest of the phase you get rerolls against that. Oh no, sorry, reroll. It's until the end of the battle, so the first time you pick it, you're kind of locked in. That feels a little bit rough. You've not got a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah, there's it's a very strong effect, right?
Mm.
Because it does affect every unit in your army.
Yeah.
So the reason you would take it a second time is obviously you've picked it, but you get the plus to wound, but it has to be targeting the same objective, right?
Yeah, you have to target the same objective every time.
Yeah.
So it's really good on like a middle of the board objective that people are going to be fighting over continuously. It's really solid for that sort of thing. You'll probably get a lot of use out of it that way. But +1 to wound is really good in Tau just because you have so much strength 8. There's a lot of wounding on 5s, and pushing that to wounding on 4s is very, very strong. Or if you have strength 8 shooting into, again, I'll use the example of Custodes, but you could, wraiths or stuff like that. Shooting into those, giving +1 to wound is very valuable in that situation.
Sure, seems like a good one. All right, so that's the old in with the new Montcar, the theoretical inverse. You get a bonus at the start of the game. How does this one work?
So during the first, second, and third battle rounds, ranged weapons equipped to your Tau Empire models from your army have lethal hits. And while a unit is guided, its ranged weapons gain the assault ability as well. So I've never seen it not be a nice thing to be able to have assault weapons, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those ones where, so previously the way the Index played, you had assault on your main crisis brick, and then you had a few assault weapons here and there. So it was very impactful. Having it army wide is a really big game changer for Tau because, we mentioned before, in order to spot, you have to be eligible to shoot, which obviously doesn't help because you're not going to be guided. So I don't know why I brought that one up. But yeah, so it's very impactful. You can have stuff like Riptides moving 16 inches and shooting, or what are they called? Strike teams moving 12 inches, like pretending they're assault intercessors, going through walls and shooting stuff. So that extra mobility can be really massive. So it's useful in a huge variety of situations.
Especially when you pair it with the 1 CP battle tactic that Montcar get, which is to flat 6-inch advance.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah. So the enhancement we've picked out is Strike Swiftly, which is Tau Empire model only. At the start of the battle, before any moves are made, using the Scout's ability, you can select up to 2 friendly Tau Empire units within 6 inches of the bearer that do not have the Scout's ability. Until the end of the battle, all models in those selected units have the Scout's 6-inch ability.
It's pretty good.
This is such a game changer for Tau, and I know it seems like it wouldn't be, but it really is. Particularly if you're playing on a terrain set like UKTC with those L-shaped ruins, because scouting forward 6 inches, then using the auto 6 advanced stratagem means you can cover 24 inches in a turn with a cold style led crisis unit or a devilfish, and then you can disembark or shoot from that point. So that is, it just gives you so so much ability to get around to these terrain pieces and reach units that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. Um, you know, giving yourself a 37-inch threat range of shooting on, say, breaches is kind of wild. But yeah, really, really, really impactful.
Obviously important to note, scouts you do after you know who's going first, and you are able to, if you go second, it's still good because you pick 2 units that you've sort of deployed on the line, but then you shuffle forward 6 inches, maybe behind a staging ruin, make sure you cut that angle, but you make it so that you don't have to sit in your deployment zone behind a wall. With crisis suits still being vehicles, it becomes more difficult to move them around, so being able to sort of circumnavigate that a little bit, get them out, do that sort of first bit of movement, and then you don't lose as much when on turn 1 you try to move into your aggressive position. I think you get quite a lot from that.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff. All right. And then stratagems. We did talk about one of these for the 1 CP auto advance 6 inches. I got a little keen there. But what's the other stratagem we've got for pinpoint counter offensive?
So this is a battle tactic as well. So 1 CP in any phase, 1 Tau Empire unit, excluding Kroot units from your army that was just destroyed. You can use this stratagem even though it was just destroyed. Again, that wording, we keep seeing it. Until the end of the battle, each time a Tau Empire unit, excluding Kroot units from your army, make an attack that targets the enemy unit that destroyed that unit, you can re-roll the hit rolls.
So Jack said this is the best stratagem in the detachment. Do you think it's maybe the best stratagem in the book before we get into what it does?
Possibly. It's very close. I mean,
so before you explain why, you said that to me, I was like, yeah, but if you play that against me, I'm just going to finish off the unit with something that I don't care about. And then what did you say, Jack?
well, I said you take a unit like a Piranha, you scout it forward 9 on the first turn, go move forward 14 inches, and then just charge face first into a unit of, I don't know,
Custodian Wardens?
Custodian Wardens, or a Satan,
Oh.
or something like that. And they will kill it, and then all of a sudden, that sacrifice for the greater good has resulted in the rest of your armies getting 4 rerolls to hit against that unit for the rest of the game for 1 measly CP.
Yeah, and that's when I went, oh, hold on, yeah, no, that does suck for me, and where I'm at emotionally. So, yeah, I definitely see the use of that. I feel like if you try and use this fairly, you'll get very little use out of it. You're like, oh, that Redemptor's killed a unit. I will now be a little bit better. But if you do, as Jack says, aggressively just pinpoint your opponent's linchpin unit on turn 1, suicide charge them, yeah, I can absolutely see the value here.
It's a lot better than the similar strat from the Necron Hypercrypt, which gives, if you kill a Cryptek, you get +1 to hit and wound, because it works on any unit in the Tau Empire index, apart from Kroot units, I believe.
Including the incredibly speedy and incredibly cheap Piranhas.
Yeah. So it means you can use it on, if someone wants to kill like a unit of stealth suits that are doing objectives for you, or they want to try and rush a ghost kill that's holding a midfield objective. You can make them pay for that by whatever kills them. All of a sudden, you're almost certainly going to kill them, because 4 rerolls to hit synergizes so much better with Tau because they have sustained and lethals all over the place. So it works very well. It's very synergistic.
Lovely. So speaking of aggressive detachments, we have another aggressive detachment, and this is my sort of speed. This is exactly the sort of Tau that I like playing. Read it to me, John.
So, Retaliation Cadre is each time a Tau Empire battlesuit model from your army makes a ranged attack that targets a unit within 12 inches, improve the strength characteristic of that attack by 1. If they're within 6 inches, improve the AP characteristic of that attack by 1 as well. Chef's kiss.
Beautiful. Because I'm going to be taking the very, very cheap unit that has all the DACA, and I'm going to be running them right up the board and saying, yes, I am indeed AP2 now. What are you going to do about it with my vast volume of shooting? I'm a big fan of this one.
I like it less than Montcar, just because it's battlesuit only, and I'm not super hot on the battlesuit units, but it's still very, very good. Like it's like an A tier like level. It's just
This literally just comes down to like playstyle philosophy.
Yeah, 100%.
We play Tau completely opposite to each other. I want to be touching my opponent. You want your opponent to be absolute paste before they get, even in eyesight. which is fair. I respect it. But for my style of play, this is exactly where I want to be. I just wish that it just said when it makes an attack that targets a unit within 12, because then I'd get melee Tau again. But, we can't have everything. Enhancements. What do we got here?
Is battlesuit model only. The bearer has grenades keyword, and each time the bearer ends a normal move, it can select one enemy unit that is moved over during that move. If you do so, roll 6d6. For each 4-up, the enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound.
So there's two parts of this. The first part is it gets the grenade keyword. I really like that part of it.
Yeah.
The next part, it depends if they do a little bit of fixing. Because right now, if you use the stratagem that everyone has seen, because it has been previewed, to 1 CP, strike and fade, and after you've shot, move the unit. That is a normal move. So you can, in theory, deep strike in, fire and fade over a unit, and do the mortal wounds to them in your shooting phase. If that stays as it is, I love that. If it doesn't, it's still good. It is a little pricey. But I see the unit that's going to have this quite often coming in from deep strike, unloading, and then maybe not necessarily moving over enemy units in the moving phase. So I'll have to see how that one plays out. All right, moving on. We just to briefly talk about, we have seen 2 stratagems previewed already for this, so we didn't want to talk about them. But you do get a 3-inch deep strike, and you do get a fire and fade for 1 CP. Both of those are very, very good. But there's also a damage boost, and I'm quite excited by that, especially given the sort of guns you might want to bring in this detachment.
Yeah, so a battle tactic again. In your shooting phase, 1 Tower Empire battlesuit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack that targets an enemy unit that contains 6 or more models, the attack has sustained hits 1. If the attack targets an enemy unit that contains 11 or more models, it has sustained hits 2 instead. So that sounds familiar. That's a Tau thing, right?
It's pretty solid. It's the only way to get sustained hits in this detachment, I believe.
On a unit, yeah.
Carry on at home.
Yeah, but you get other benefits, so I'm pretty okay with that. And it's nice to have in your back pocket. Squads of 6 or more, you're going to come up against fairly regularly. You can even turn that on against the Warden Brex, which getting sustained hits 1 against 6 models is quite nice. You then occasionally, if you face into someone who's brought 120 of, let's say just like a whole carpet of Tyranids, you're going to be very happy to have that in your back pocket, especially because it's a battle tactic. And you can, if you want to bring Farsight, which I will be doing, run that twice.
Combos very well with Tetras, combos very well with Fire Knife battlesuits as well. Very good to get the sustain too. You can go fish for those if you want. Very solid.
All right. And then finally, there's the Kroot hunting pack. And I will admit, I'm not enthusiastic about Tau auxiliaries. I will take them for cheap scoring units, but I'm not really interested in them outside of that. Is there any point to running this outside of having a big clown nose, John?
So each time a Kroot model from your army makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll if the target of that attack is below starting strength, and add 1 to the wound roll as well if the target is below half strength. Kroot models from your army also have a 6-up invuln against melee attacks, and a 5-up invuln against ranged attacks.
You started reading the first paragraph, and I was poised for a big sigh. And then you read the second paragraph, and I was like, oh, it's just a bonus rule to the actual detachment rule, which is I get a 5-up invuln on all of my models. Did I mention, Tyranid carpets? You can run 120 Kroot. Just, pretty convincingly if you wanted to go down that route. We haven't worked out if that's good, but you can do it.
You can.
And that's all we have to say on the matter. Keep your eyes out. There will be, at least one of the regular players on the UKTC circuit who will be doing that and probably winning an event with it. So we'll come back to you on that one.
The Kroot detachment comes into the slight problem of the one that the other detachments have managed to avoid, in that it's a good detachment. It has good. It's got solid detachment role. It's got good enhancements. It's got solid stratagems. It's just the data sheets that they interact with aren't that great. They're just okay. So it's fine. It's just I think if you run a Kroot army, if you're the kind of person that wants to run a Kroot army, then you won't be disappointed with it. I don't think in the long run. But it's not something that's good enough to make me excited to run a Kroot army if I didn't already.
Yeah. So this isn't the one that we were talking about, but you also mentioned before we went live that they have maybe the best melee enhancement in the game.
Yeah,
In
one of
Yeah.
it's just on a
and
Kroot.
I said, yeah,
filter.
the weapons that they buff are completely worthless.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the context of the weapon that it's upgrading, yeah, is pretty good.
All right. So what have we gone with?
So we've gone with the Kroot Hawk Flock, which is ranged weapons equipped by the models in the bearer's unit have ignores cover ability, and enemy units that are set up in the battlefield as reinforcements cannot be set up within 12 inches horizontally of the bearer.
It's good.
You a no-go zone for as an enhancement is very good. We like to see that because you don't want to have to spend like 60 points on a unit to just have a no-go zone. When you can just spend a couple of points and get it as an enhancement on any character you want. This does also mean you can have 2 no-go zones in your list as a Tau in a Tau army, because you can take Dark Strider as well, which will cover a very large area. But yeah, it's just solid. Considering how many 3-inch deep strikes there are in the game, it's just really good. The ignores cover is just a nice bonus.
The one thing to be aware of on it, though, is it is 12 inches horizontally of the bearer. So unlike something like Infiltrators, that's that whole unit spread out. This is just that one model on a 32mm base. So it's still a good space, but just not quite as oppressive.
Yeah, I think that's the standard for most units in the game. I think it's just Infiltrators that are the outlier there. So
That's so good.
Yeah.
All right. And what stratagem did we go for the Kroot hunting pack?
Right. So Hidden Hunters is a strategic ploy, 1 CP. In your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, 1 Kroot unit from your army that was selected as a target of 1 or more attacking units' attacks. Until the end of the phase, they can only be selected as the target of the ranged attack if they are within 12 inches.
This is a really good strat. It's really good wherever you see it. The things you're protecting are less valuable, but they're still going to score your primary.
What's better than a 5-pin volt against shooting? Untargetable.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
It's nice.
Yeah. Hard to argue with it.
So, works on your Krootox rampages, works on your Kroot hounds, works on all that sort of stuff.
If you convert up some Storm Surges to be covered in Kroot tribal, markings and stuff, in a Crusade game, I'd let you do it.
Feral Tau, they've gone native.
Absolutely.
Kroot hounds on shoulders and everything.
Yeah. All right. So moving back to reality, we did have a list. Now, something to note, the points in the book are interesting. And by interesting, I mean they're the index points. This is probably not right because, for example, the Riptide is 80 points more in the index than it is in the current MFM. So we've gone with the assumption that all of the points are the MFM points, what you can get currently. We will see if that changes with it being a new book. The only thing that we went with points-wise that is, from the book are the new the Fire Knife battle suits and the Star Size battle suits, because they didn't have sort of an analog to compare them to. They're obviously significantly worse than the current battle suit, so it's unlikely that they'll be still pointed at 200 points for 3. So give us a run through this list, Jack, and we'll sort of talk about why you think it's good.
Okay, so this is a monk card attachment. I've gone with an Enforcer Commander with 4 missile pods. He's going to be joining a unit of Fire Knife battlesuits with 2 missile pods each. Then we've got a Ethereal with Strike Swiftly for that scout. It being on him is not essential. You can put it on the Enforcer Commander if you want. You can move it around. It's just as long as it's in there, right? That's the important thing. But the Ethereal is there for some CP regen. He sits in a unit of Fire Warrior Strike Teams, which sit on the home objective with Feel No Pain and just try not to die to indirect. We have 2 Devilfish full of Fire Warrior strike teams with Cadre Fire Blades. We're taking advantage of the combat debarkation stratagem for rerolls to wound if we need it, as well as taking advantage of the Focus Fire and Pulse Onslaught stratagems, which are very, very good stratagems. Pulse Onslaught giving is the movement debuff, so -2, -2, -2 to move, advance, and charge, and then Focus Fire is +1 AP for 2 units, as long as they shoot at the same thing. Then we're looking at 3 Piranhas with Fusion Blasters. They are there to use with a pinpoint counter-offensive stratagem, as well as being great anti-tank in themselves, being cheap. They can do objectives and stuff. They can sit on a midfield objective and say, you can kill me if you want, but you're going to pay for it if you do. We've got some finance as discussed. We've got a Star Scythe battlesuits with the Cold Star Commander. The Cold Star Commander's got 3 missile pods and 6 Iron Blaster, and the Star Scythe's got they've all got flamers. So the Cold Star here also has the enhancement for coordinated exploitation. Coordinated exploitation. This is because you can do a neat trick here where the battlesuits don't need to benefit from the Star Scythes. Yeah, Star Scythes don't need to benefit from spotting. The commander is more freed up to spot different stuff. Because his unit loses very little by not being spotted for. So he gets the benefit and give out sustained hits to something else. Usually the Fire Knights in this case with their rerolls to hit from long range. So that's sort of like a synergy there. You can do some split firing there as well. The Cold Star Commander can put all of his shots, his missile pods at Iron Blaster, which are all gaining in AP from the Star Scythe ability. You can just you can deep strike them in and kill a bunch of targets. We have 2 units of 2 Tetras. You can swap this out for stealth suits. That's just preference. I think all of my Towler is just it's just a default setting. I think I've put in the settings. Just start with 2 Tetras. We've got a Ghost Kill for midfield objectiving, yes, and then 3 Riptides with Iron Accelerators and Plasma Rifles. Montcar giving lethals sort of shortens up the one weakness that Riptides have of being Strength 8. So they're wounding stuff a lot easier. And then they also benefit a whole lot from the aggressive mobility stratagem we were talking about before, as well as the counter-fire defense system stratagem, which is -1 damage. They both really like those stratagems. So they just work really well, really synergize in there.
Yeah, burying the lead a little bit, I think, with this detachment until you get to the Riptides at the bottom where you
Triple Riptide just at the end,
it's just
sneaking that one in.
Yeah. I think in this list, I really like the Tetras. Getting those full rerolls to hit, being able to fish for those lethal hits on the Riptides is very valuable, I think, into the tough targets. And as you say, getting that 6-inch advance so you can get the angles that you need. This is, being able to advance and shoot is with a high value vehicle that's also fairly tanky is very valuable, as we've seen with the Ironstorm Marines. So being able to ape, a fraction of that power with Riptides, but then also bring other mobile shooting units, I think is quite nice as well.
This is just my first pass on the list. I could probably optimize this a little bit more. Stuff like the strike teams, I think they're good, but it's one of those things that they're new, they're shiny. I want to try them out.
For me, and this is a little bit of personal bias, I want to see Farsight in there. He's solid. +1 to wound is good. He opens up the ability to get free battle tactics. This detachment has good battle tactics, but it fully is just bias. Every game of Tau that I've played since I picked them up in 9th edition and then didn't play them at all in 10th had Farsight in. So it's definitely a little bit of that.
I think Farsight shines more in the retaliation cadre where he can get within 9 when he drops. But so he didn't quite make the cut for me on this one. But yeah, still solid. Can't deny.
That's fair. All right. Thank you for joining us. This has been the first episode of Tau. This is very fresh, very early. We're excited to, all of us, get some games in with Tau. All of us, some more than others, play Tau. Jack's been hating them pretty hard recently. I've not enjoyed them in 10th, but this is the spark that I've been looking for. I can play my aggressive Tau, and John is picking them up. So we will be playing some games. We'll be looking at how we want to write some lists, and we will be back next week with one of the detachments, as yet undecided. Basically, whichever one we enjoy playing the most, I think. Thanks as always for watching. Please do like the video, subscribe if you want to hit join. That is a great way to support us if you enjoy our content, and we will be back next week.